Good morning. Nice welcome.
How's everyone doing? Everyone's looking great this morning? This morning, we have a phenomenal woman in your presence. Someone who represents all that we try to be about. Someone who has courage, consciousness, and commitment, and understands that service to your brethren is of extreme importance. Someone who is a pathfinder, who has shown us that as a woman, you can take a lead and hold one of the most powerful positions in the state of New Jersey as Assembly Speaker. One of the most powerful branches of government that a lot of times we ignore is the legislative branch. And people don't realize that assemblymen and women are the ones who make the laws that govern our society. This phenomenal woman is here from the city of Newark, in which she was born and raised.
That's correct.
And became the first African-American woman of color
That's correct.
to become the Assembly Speaker in the state of New Jersey. The majority of our students here are females, and they are phenomenal in themselves, and they're college bound. But the important thing that I want all of you to understand is that service is much more important than success. So let us all welcome Assembly Speaker Sheila.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm sorry I was a little late because 11 o'clock was our appointed hour. But I had to meet this morning with some of my colleagues in the legislature with Mayor Quintana. And as you know, Mayor Quintana is the interim mayor of Newark until July 1st. And there were some problems that the mayor was having, and he needed our help. And I think that Mr. Gregory explained to a T, women who wanted to go out and work and have a career, women pretty much could be one of three things: a teacher, a nurse, or a social worker. And back in those times, it was felt that women didn't have the capability, the intellect, or the competence to do anything else. Shirley Chisholm found she couldn't get a job in corporate America, so she decided to become a teacher. And she saw the need for childcare and early childhood education. So she got politically involved in Brooklyn. She ran for Congress and she won. There are 435 members of the Congress. We call it also the U.S. House of Representatives. There's 435 people from all over the country that are elected to the Congress. She was the only black woman in the midst of 434 other members of Congress. Her road wasn't easy. But one of the things that she said was, service is the rent we pay for living here on earth. And Mr. Gregory hit the nail right on the head. Well, I want to thank Belinda Jackson, Ms. Jackson, for inviting me here today to American History High School. And I've known Ms. Jackson and her family for many, many years. They are very active in the community. And it's no surprise to me that Ms. Jackson is at American History High School and that she's involved in doing what she does because it's reflective of some of the things her family has done for decades. And if you want to see a Shirley Chisholm type of a woman, you need to meet her mom, Mrs. Jackson. Because Mrs. Jackson is someone who every week when the city council meets, you will see her mom in the audience paying attention to what's going on. Now, Ms. Jackson has asked me to just talk about a couple of topics with you, and the first being the importance of a woman's voice in politics. And I started by telling you about Shirley Chisholm. How many of you ever, as a baby or a preschooler, were in preschool or Head Start? How many of you? Went to, look, almost everyone in this room. Right, daycare, same thing. Daycare, preschool, Head Start. If it were not for Shirley Chisholm, daycare would not exist in this country. Because when she went to the Congress in the late 1960s, one of the first pieces of law that she enacted was creation of daycare, childcare, Head Start, worked with the federal government. Because she understood as a woman, other women would not be able to go work, further their education, get involved in a career or an occupation if they didn't have a way for their children to be cared for. And my first day that I came to a voting session, she walked over to me and she said, "Welcome, sister. It's been mighty lonely in here." Because she was the one voice representing issues of concern to women of color. Now that was 10 years ago, and we have increased the number of women in the New Jersey General Assembly, but it is still a male-dominated environment. But we've got some pretty strong women in the New Jersey Senate. I represent a district that's called District 34. The senator of that district is Senator Nia Gill. She's got braids, bold jewelry, Afrocentric, is an attorney, and you can't get past her on the Judiciary Committee. And the Judiciary Committee is the committee that has to approve all judges, all of the governor's appointments, etc. We also have Senator Shirley Turner, who's in the Senate. She works for the College of New Jersey. Shirley Turner is another strong woman in the legislature. And I just left a meeting with one of the women that represents you in Newark. Her name is Assemblywoman Grace Spencer. Grace Spencer grew up in the South Ward of Newark. She graduated from Rutgers Law School. She is a lawyer, and she currently is a prosecutor for the city of Newark. So we've increased the number of women in the legislature, but we haven't done enough. And I hope that some of you, by being in a school whose curriculum focuses on history, that some of you will take interest in politics. It's very important. Because if you are not in a room where decisions are being made, people will make decisions for you that will control your life. And I like to tell people, someone is making a decision how much your loaf of bread and your quart of milk is going to cost. Don't you want to have something to say about how much your milk costs? Or how much your rent is? Or how much you have to pay for clothing? Or electricity? Or heat? Well, people in politics are the people that drive those decisions. And I think it's important for more women to be in the room. Because women, there's an old African proverb that says, "The hand that rocks the cradle guides the nation." And what that means is that we as women, the caretakers of children, the nurturers of our families, we really guide the course and direction of a nation because we are putting a value system into the children that we are raising. And women need to be at the forefront and at the table when political decisions are made. Last year, I was the sponsor of a piece of legislation to raise the minimum wage in New Jersey. Now, I could not believe the arguments I had to have with people about why New Jersey could not keep minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. And many of you aren't old enough to work yet. But if you had been, 16 years old and you had your working papers and you would go get a job, your salary would be $7.25 an hour. Now, I had to argue with business owners, Chamber of Commerce, New Jersey Business and Industry Association, and the governor of this state, who felt we couldn't raise the minimum wage. Earning $7.25 a week in a minimum wage job means that you probably come home with $290 a week. Now, I live in New Jersey, I live in Essex County. I know no place you can live in New Jersey off of $290 a week. The average rent in our area is $1,000 a month. The average rent in our area is $1,000 a month. And for people who have low income, we used to have a lot of programs that help people subsidize their rent, where the federal government would provide what we call a Section 8 housing voucher. And under that program, 30% of your rent is paid by the government. But through the past 5-6 years, and particularly while President Obama has been in office, Congress has not wanted to fully fund programs to subsidize people's rent. And that is why we see so many homeless families, not just in New Jersey, but all across the country. Now, here I am, the speaker, a woman legislator. I'm walking amongst families who rely on $7.25 an hour. And we had to fight to get the minimum wage raised. The governor asked if he could negotiate with me. I went and talked to him. And this is what his negotiation was. I'll agree to raising it 25 cents this year, 50 cents the next year, and 25 cents the last year. I walked out and I said, I'm sorry, Governor, that's not a negotiation to me. And what we had to do to increase the minimum wage, we had to put it to a vote to the voters. And your state constitution has all kinds of little loopholes. If you can't get the support of a governor, the legislature, and Mr. Gregory described, the legislature is an important part of government. The legislature can put something up for a vote to its members 2 times. And if a majority of the members vote on it 2 times, we can put it on the ballot for the voters of the state. And that's how we had to increase the minimum wage. So starting January 1st, 2014, the minimum wage raised from $7.25 to $8.25. I'm not happy with that either. But at least it took us out of $7.25. And when voters came to vote, it said that if you vote yes, it'll go to $8.25. And whenever the cost of living in New Jersey raises, the minimum wage will have to automatically raise too. So that way you never have to get the support of a governor, the support of a legislature. We have permanently changed the Constitution so that the minimum wage will always rise. I'm describing this to you because this is why we need more women in politics. Because many of the men are lawyers, doctors, engineers, they own businesses, they make a lot of money, and they can't relate to the issue of somebody who's struggling to live off $290 a week. But as women, we can relate to these things. Now, the other thing you know, why it's important for women's voices in politics. Do you know that women earn 77 cents for every dollar that a man earns? I could be doing the same job as he is doing. Because I am a woman, they'll pay me a lower salary. And it is historical. So many of us in the New Jersey state legislature are fighting for what is called gender equity in salary. Now, in the public sector would be working for City Hall, working for the county, working for a high school. In the public sector, you see more equality because we have unions, and unions fight for the benefits of all the people that belong to them. But in many companies in this country, it is not illegal for an employer to pay a woman a different salary than a man. How many of you think that if you're doing an equal job, you should get equal pay? That's right. That's absolutely right. I know that one was going to be right. And we're working together, women in the state legislature, and we will, if we can't get it done at a state level, we will rely on our Congress to push the envelope. And President Obama has moved forward and done executive orders. He passed something that is called the Lilly Ledbetter Act. And Lilly Ledbetter was a woman who worked in a factory, and she did an equal job to the men working with her, but her company paid her less. So Lilly Ledbetter began to go around the country talking to women, talking to elected officials, and the president signed the Lilly Ledbetter Act. But states still have a lot of laws on the books that allow them to pay differently. Now, the many roles women play behind the scenes in government. For those of us that are involved in politics, something that we have said for years, the women are the ones licking the envelopes and putting the stamps on the envelopes and supporting the candidacies of people that you see get elected. I don't care if it's a mayor, a council person, a freeholder, a school board member. Historically, women have been behind the scenes. And an interesting book about this subject is a book that was written by the late Dr. Dorothy Height. And she wrote a book called Open Wide, the Freedom Gates. Dr. Height was one of a group of women who were the backup support for Dr. Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. That is the group that started the boycott of the buses when she was in the back and there were seats in the front and she was going to sit down in them. Well, Rosa Parks, you all know, I know you've learned it, this is a history school. Rosa said she was sitting down, her feet hurt, she had worked all day, she was a seamstress, and she was arrested because there was a law that people of color could not sit at the front. Well, Rosa Parks was one of a group of women with Dorothy Height and others who were the behind-the-scenes organizers, recruiters, putting the rallies together, you know, supporting the men that you saw at the forefront of the civil rights movement. And Dorothy Height writes about that in her book, Open Wide, the Freedom Gates. So we always know about, you know, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we know about Reverend Al Sharpton, and we know about, you know, Paul Robeson, and we know about others, men. Never has there been a social movement in this country where women were not behind the scenes making it happen. You talk to any candidate or office holder who is male, and they will tell you they would have never been elected if it were not for the work of women in the community. Women are the movers and the shakers. And now, these days, we call the women the shot callers because we are calling the shots. So never forget that women have always played a role behind the scenes. Now, reflections on my life as a legislator growing up in Newark. Just to tell you historically how much Newark has changed. The Newark that I grew up in is a Newark you don't know. When I was born, black women who were having babies couldn't even go to some hospitals that were in Newark because it was segregated. And there were some hospitals that would only accept people who were not of color. So there was a hospital in Newark called Lutheran Memorial Hospital. My mother had an African-American doctor. His name was Dr. Reynold Birch. He was very handsome, and the women in Newark loved Dr. Birch. But he was my mother's obstetrician, and he delivered me in Lutheran Memorial Hospital, which at that time was on High Street. Lutheran Memorial today is Clara Moss Hospital. But when Lutheran Memorial had to build a new hospital, they went to the border of Newark and Belleville, and they built Clara Moss. If you go into Clara Moss to ever visit someone, you will see what we call a cornerstone, and it is the piece of brick that was taken from the old Lutheran Memorial, and they put it there so they can reflect on historically how they got their start as a hospital. So I was born there, and I pretty much grew up in the South Ward of Newark. I graduated from Chancellor Avenue School, and I also graduated from Weequahic High School. Now, I went to Peshine Avenue School for about 2 weeks. You went to Peshine? I went to Peshine Avenue School for about 2-3 weeks. And I also went to Hawthorne Avenue School. Now you'll ask the question, well, why did you go to Peshine, Hawthorne, and then you ended up at Chancellor? Well, during that time, there was a legal battle going on in the city of Newark because this Newark Board of Education was operating segregated schools. And you could go around Newark, some schools were all black, some schools were all white, and I'm gonna wrap it up. Wrap it up. And so they went to court. When they went to court, students were then all kind of reallocated so that there would be integrated schools in Newark. And while all that court stuff was going on, that's why I stayed a couple weeks in Peshine, a couple weeks in a couple of years. I spent 2 years at Hawthorne, and then I went to Chancellor Weequahic. And I had the best time as a student in Newark. Some of the friendships that I made are still my best friendships. So know that you are going to meet people as you finish your high school careers in Newark. Some of the people that you are friends with are going to be lifelong friends and like sisters to you. Why young women should continue their education. And the one thing I do want to tell you about growing up in Newark, I had a lot of friends, I was a very social person, but I never succumbed to peer pressure. And if my friends, you know, you have cliques in school, so in my clique, if my clique didn't like the girls over at the other side of the room, that didn't mean I didn't like the girls on the other side of the room. I never allowed my peers to dictate to me who I would be friends with, where I would go, or what I was going to do. And if there is one important message that you can remember from me today, that message is be your own person, make your own decisions, and don't choose to do things because a friend wants you to do it. Making your own decisions are going to get you where you want to be, wherever it is you choose you want to be. But you have to be a leader and not a follower.